And it's a very good morning, and thank you for choosing CCFM 107.5. Jonathan and Rachel with you on this Thursday morning, the 16th of September, and we are now joined by Michael Swain, Freedom of Religion South Africa's Executive Director. Good morning, Michael, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Jonathan. It's always great to be on Breakfast with Friends.
Oh dear, sorry. Yes, so good. Sorry, I switched on the wrong channel, so apology about that. You can hear me all right, and I can hear you. That is the good thing.
Technology is great when it works.
Yes, it is. True that. So today, as we chat to Michael Swain, it's a very important discussion. 4SA works in the field of religious freedom to protect us and our rights to religious freedom. And today we're talking about 4SA's submission to Parliament regarding the Disaster Management Amendment Bill, as well as the Hate Speech Bill, which is currently open for comment. Michael, tell us a little more about the Disaster Management Amendment Bill. What is it about, and what did 4SA say to Parliament?
Thank you, Jonathan. I think it's probably worthwhile backtracking a little bit. Because as you might recall, back in March last year, seems like a long time ago, we had a situation whereby the government whereby it deal with the situation facing in terms of pandemic. We really had two pandemics. One is to declare a state of emergency, and the other was to use the National Disaster Act. And the difference between the two is this. If you declare a state of emergency, then essentially all our constitutional rights are suspended. But the check and balance there too is that every 21 days, Parliament has to reconvene and it has to basically approve an extension. What happened in this instance was, of course, a state of national disaster was declared. And that is a stage lower, if you like, than a national disaster. But the problem is that it was never designed for a pandemic or a situation like this, because what it basically does is it gives the broadest possible powers to, in this instance, the COGTA Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. And she, or the small group of executive that are assembled for purpose, then are able to pretty much pass whatever regulations they want. And as it turns out, as we've discovered, for pretty much as long as they want, with very little or no actual parliamentary oversight or investigation or showing us the reasons for their decisions and what have you. And it simply just gets extended and extended and extended. It was never designed for that purpose. It was designed more for the purpose of, say, you have like an earthquake, for example, and there's a temporary, it might be a national disaster in one sense, but you're going to get over it. This pandemic just rolls on and on and on. I don't think anybody even remembers just about that the original purpose of it was 15 days to flatten the curve. In other words, government was supposed to use that short space of time to ramp up our health services so that those who needed treatment could get treatment, and then we were all going to go back to life as normal. Well, 500 and something days later, that clearly hasn't happened. So what has happened now is that a Parliament and even elements of the legislature are really not happy with the fact that they've pretty much been excluded from the decision-making processes, and there is almost no parliamentary oversight. So this bill is designed so that in the event that this ever happens again, and the National Disaster Act is evoked, there will be a far higher level of oversight and input from the executive. There will be checks and balances. And it won't just be a simple sort of majority of Parliament to pass it, because then the ANC could effectively just extend it and extend it and extend it like they're kind of doing now at an executive level. But the margin, the percentage that needs to be, if you like, garnered to pass an extension of it will get bigger and bigger. And also, when we, 4SA, were in court, we were for Parliament, we were particularly arguing for public participation, because as again we have seen, there have been very discriminatory measures which have highly adversely affected the religious sector, which haven't even applied at some points to other sectors of society of a similar nature. And so we were also saying that there ought to be in this amendment a much greater demand for public participation, as well as just obviously legislative oversight.
It's really an interesting one and a big one that we've hammered on a number of times, Michael, in terms of that thing, that it was as if churches specifically and the religious arena in our country were targeted, as you said. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome is with regard to that. Any further comments that you'd like to add?
Well, yes. I mean, we have a very important outcome that we're hoping to achieve. As you may remember, the only other way, of course, of checking the executive, because Parliament was unable to fulfill that function, was to actually go to the judicial system. And so 4SA opened a case in January last year, in fact, where we were saying it is obvious that the religious sector has been unfairly discriminated against. You might remember, you could sit side by side and pull the slot machine handles in a casino, but you couldn't sit side by side in exactly the same circumstances and have a praying session together. And so we have taken the government to court, the COGTA minister specifically, and we are asking for a very important precedent to be set, whereby government will have to show that what it is doing is rational, reasonable, proportionate, fit for purpose. You can only limit a constitutional right to the extent that it must be limited. In other words, it must be the most or sort of like limited approach to taking away somebody's constitutional right, not just a blanket ban, and certainly not a discriminatory one. And so we're in court on the 22nd to the 24th of November. That case is going to be heard. And the advantage of that will be setting a legal precedent means this, that if government does anything like that again, and bear in mind, they have done it, in fact, the second time. You might remember about 2 months ago, they allowed restaurants and fitness clubs to open but shut churches. We can then go with an urgent application to court and have those regulations overturned. Whereas at the moment, of course, what's happening is that whenever it gets to the steps of the court, which is exactly what happened to us in February when we were about to be heard in our case, government then just changed it and said, well, it doesn't account anymore, and so we can just carry on. No, we absolutely need to have some precedent. We need to have some jurisprudence. We need to set parameters in place so that we can protect and promote our religious freedom rights if this situation should ever arise again.
So good with regard to that. And then we don't have a lot of time, but just want to touch on the hate speech bill. And in saying that, I'm aware that there's a lot to unpack about this, but I understand that the hate speech bill is currently open to the public for comment. What can you tell us about this?
Well, this came about because, and again, there was a very long-standing and long-running case called the Kulani case, and the Constitutional Court finally came up with a definition of hate speech. And the consequence of that almost immediately was that the Prevention of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill was reintroduced to Parliament or reopened, because now that definition is clear. And the problem is this, that for the first time ever, in South African law, it criminalizes hate speech. You can face up to 3 years in jail for a first offense, 5 years for a second or subsequent offense. And it is one of those chilling factors where even the fact that you could go to jail for something that you say kind of inhibits you from maybe saying things that you think might send you to jail, because not many people want to go to jail for something that they say. And we fought last time, you might recall, to have a clause put in to specifically protect religious speech, bona fide preaching and teaching that does not, of course, amount to hate speech and advocacy, to hatred or an incitement to violence. But again, the deputy minister at the time said he didn't think that would apply to speech outside the pulpit. Well, what good is that? So we are going to be launching a campaign. It's going to kick off this week. In fact, if you go to our website, probably today or tomorrow, it's going to start off, but we're going to really be pushing it because submissions close on the 1st of October, and we need now to get our voices heard. Government have refused an extension, which is extraordinary. They gave only 24 days for comment, which is a ridiculously short length of time. But we do believe now that this is our opportunity. So we're setting up a campaign, and we're going to encourage everybody, again, make your voice heard. We're going to give you our concerns, set it out for you very clearly, and make it very easy for you to make your own personal submission so that you can indeed be part of this very critical democratic legal process.
Sure. Thank you so much. And again, that website address for us, please, Michael.
It's www.forsa.org.za, or you can go to our Facebook page, Freedom of Religion SA, and we'll be able to give you links to all the different ways that you can do it. But it's going to start off tomorrow, but then we must really push it, because the end of the month, that's it. We haven't been given long this time. So we need to get engaged.
No,
and get
definitely not. And again, it's a great resource, the 4sa.org.za website, for any questions that you have that are related to freedom of religion, also past articles, past videos explaining certain things and so forth. You will find that on their side, on their website. So go to www.forsa.org.za. Michael Swain, always great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and we wish you and the rest of the team at Freedom of Religion South Africa all the best.
Thank you, Jonathan. Always a pleasure to be on the show.